Hey, what's up guys? Today, I'll show you a supernatural horror film, The Boy, Part 1. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins with Greta traveling the spooky road for a new job of being a nanny. Amidst their journey in the creepy ambience, the driver sneakily spies on Greta's body. Unbothered, Greta ignores and sleeps until the driver wakes her up for her most awaited destination. A little later, Greta proceeds to the isolated mansion and witnesses the atmosphere's silence. She opens the door and enters the place only to see no one. Next, she removes her shoes and roams every corner. There, she sees a giant family portrait and is amazed by the place's structure. Intrigued by the mysterious sound, Greta climbs upstairs to check if someone is currently in the place. Then she sees a set of toys that catch her attention. A little later, a voice suddenly resounds, shocking Greta to drop the toy. She feels relieved after seeing a delivery man named Malcolm. Greta assumes that Malcolm is the owner, but Malcolm states that he only delivers groceries. They familiarize themselves in the kitchen, conversing about their lives. Subsequently, Malcolm shares that he can read someone using a piece of chewing gum. Curious, Greta gives her chewing gum, where Malcolm attempts to read the past. Malcolm guesses that Greta's past is dark because of someone. Afterward, Greta loses her smile, as if the prediction is accurate. The conversation resumes until one of the owners arrives. Mrs. Heelshear interrupts the chit-chat, asking Greta about her not wearing her shoes. Then Greta returns to where she puts her pair of shoes, but alarmingly finds nothing. Thus, Mrs. Heelshear states that it might be their son who can be playful sometimes. Later, Mrs. Heelshear introduces Greta to Mr. Heelshear and their 8-year-old son, Brahms. However, Greta gets astonished after seeing that Brahms is a porcelain doll, causing her to laugh disrespectfully. She stops laughing when she realizes that Mr. and Mrs. Heelshear are serious about Brahms being a doll. Seconds pass, and Malcolm greets Brahms, also like a living child. In respect, Greta approaches Brahms by talking to him too. Eventually, Mrs. Heelshear reiterates the responsibilities that Greta must fulfill. Also, Mrs. Heelshear shares that several nannies applied, but Brahms rejected them and might prefer Greta for being pretty. She emphasizes that Greta needs to wake Brahms at 7 o'clock in the morning. She also teaches Greta the right way of carrying and dressing Brahms. Moreover, Mrs. Heelshear instructs Greta to read books with Brahms in a loud voice. She points out that Brahms loves loud music. During lunch, Greta joins the entire family and sees how Mrs. Heelshear treats Brahms like a living individual. The task discussion is not over, as Mrs. Heelshear directs Greta on how to keep leftover foods by not throwing them. Moments later, Mr. Heelshear enters to tell other duties. Mr. Heelshear informs Greta to keep the house from animals by cleaning the traps, since Brahms hates animals. He also states that their son, Brahms, is always with them inside the house. At night, Greta silently observes how Mr. and Mrs. Heelshear pray with Brahms. Correspondingly, Mrs. Heelshear asks for privacy with their son, which leads Mr. Heelshear to close the door. While waiting, Greta listens until Mrs. Heelshear exits the room, saying that Brahms chose Greta as the new nanny. Occupied by the enigmatic, Greta shares her experiences with her sister in a call. She tells how the couple treats a life-size doll. Meanwhile, the sister emphasizes that this is a perfect time for Greta to move on. Furthermore, Greta also learns that her abusive ex-boyfriend has been looking for her. As a support, the sister says she will not provide Greta's address. The following day, Greta fixes her bedding and prepares for a new day until she hears a startling sound. She goes to the room and sees the things messed up on the floor. Meanwhile, Mrs. Heelshear becomes very disappointed and talks to Brahms about all the messed up stuff. She sincerely talks to Brahms to behave. As this occurs, Greta wonders how a porcelain Brahms can ruin pieces of stuff. Later, Mr. Heelshear catches Greta's attention, only to give her a piece of paper containing the rules. He strictly warns her to follow everything, because Brahms is different. Before the couple leaves for vacation, Mr. Heelshear provides caution to be good to Brahms. Furthermore, Mrs. Heelshear finally hands her Brahms and whispers, "I'm sorry," to Greta. Then, the couple leaves with a regretful look. Embracing the freedom, Greta puts Brahms in the chair and apologetically covers the face with a towel for being a creepy doll. Greta chooses to ignore the rules and lives her routine. She goes to the kitchen to make a peanut butter jelly sandwich and pairs it with a glass of wine. She reads a magazine and falls asleep in her chair. Shortly, Greta wakes up and realizes it's evening. She puts the used plate in glass, where he sees Brahms now uncovered. Frightened, Greta gets Brahms and places him in his bedroom. Amidst the rainy night, Greta wakes up and hears a baby whimpering. She grabs a candle and proceeds downstairs to stare at the family portrait. A horrifying misery explodes when Brahms in the painting becomes alive, only to choke her. A revelation arises when Greta wakes in sweat, experiencing a nightmare. However, she hears a crying sound again. This time, she goes to the bedroom and sees Brahms in the same position. Greta gets shocked upon noticing that Brahms is releasing tears. She goes nearer to Brahms, only to see water dripping from the ceiling, giving Greta great relief. The following day, Greta discovers a closed attic in the ceiling. Curious, she tries to open it through a fire poker, but is unsuccessful. When boredom strikes, Greta plays the piano once and habitually calls her sister. Shortly, she receives another call, but hears static from the other line. In the afternoon, Malcolm comes to deliver the groceries, get the food leftovers, and gives Greta's first week's salary. With the strange happenings, Greta asks about the Brahms. Consequently, Malcolm brings her to the real Brahms' grave. Malcolm shares the real story of Brahms passing away on his 8th birthday because of a fire tragedy. He elaborates that the doll shows up out of nowhere, leading Mr. and Mrs. Hilscher to take care of it instead. Saddened, Greta realizes that it's been 20 years since Brahms died. She expresses her sympathy to the couple for coping with the misery. Shortly, Malcolm invites Greta for a date. Hesitatingly, Greta denies it, but agrees before they separate ways. While returning to the mansion, someone stares at Malcolm and Greta, signifying a puzzling terror. The time for the date arrives, and Greta prepares her dress while speaking to her sister. Her sister showcases support upon noticing Greta moving on from a traumatic relationship. Amidst the dialogue, Greta gets distracted as Brahms seems to be watching her, leading her to close her door. Meanwhile, Greta brings her dress to the bathroom and removes her necklace. While showering, horrifying chaos emerges as the dress and necklace get dragged by an unknown individual. Upon looking in the mirror, Greta realizes someone has cut her hair. Confused, she proceeds to her bedroom and sees the clothes missing. Not long after, Greta hears a spinning sound from the ceiling. At this point, the attic is now open and the ladders are released down. She assumes Malcolm might be messing around, so she climbs the stairs toward the attic. When Greta enters the attic, the ladders get quickly pulled up, locking her inside. Helpless, Greta uses all of her strength by banging the door with metal. Next, Malcolm arrives at the mansion to fetch her for their date. Hearing Malcolm's car, Greta releases all her energy to break the door. She produces the loudest screams, but Malcolm doesn't hear anything. Succeedingly, Malcolm waits and even calls Greta's name at the door. Since no one answers, Malcolm drives his car away from the place. As this transpires, Greta can't do anything but shout for help and watches Malcolm leave. Filled with darkness, Greta roams the attic until she witnesses a shadow, causing her to lose consciousness. The sun rises, and Greta realizes that the figure that shocks her is a jacket. She also sees the family's old album, which lets her see Brahms' odd reaction in every picture. Afterward, the ladder gets released and the attic opens, allowing her to free herself and go down. In a moment, Malcolm visits Greta, and they both check the attic's mystery. Before Malcolm can touch it, the ladder returns to its original state, closing the attic again. Malcolm believes the house is safe, while Greta insists that someone is there since her clothes are missing. On a solemn night, they play billiards while having some controversial talk. Greta asks about Brahms again. In response, Malcolm shares 2 types of stories in town about the real Brahms. The first is about Brahms being lovely, and the second is about being strange. He also recalls that he once asked Mr. Hilscher about Brahms, but only described the child as odd. He can vividly remember how regretful Mr. Hilscher was, which implies an enigmatic warning. Meanwhile, Brahms is placed in his bedroom as if he can hear the entire conversation through a speaker. It can be noticed that Brahms' room has speakers, allowing him to listen to the discussions. After the game, Malcolm leaves the place, and Greta goes to her bedroom. There, she calls her sister to share things about Brahms. The sister opens again that the abusive boyfriend has been forcing them to tell Greta's address. Thus, Greta thanks her sister for not giving her exact location. As Greta brushes her teeth, a shadow appears twice, catching her attention. She then notices a sheet of paper scattered on the floor, while Brahms stares at her. She approaches and twists the Brahms' distracting head. However, a commotion arises when Brahms moves his head back. Terrified, Greta rises from her bed, realizing it is a dream. The terror resumes when Greta hears a child's laughing and giggling sound. She opens her door and is shocked to see her shoes at the door. It can be remembered that the shoes went missing on Greta's first day. Then, Greta goes to Brahms' bedroom, only to see Brahms sitting in bed. The rule list is also beside Brahms, implying that she must adhere to the rules. Stunned by the episodes, Greta runs away and locks Brahms' bedroom. She then grabs the phone, but is now unable to function. Petrifying turbulence emerges when the phone rings again, enabling Greta to answer it. However, a child speaks on the phone, pronouncing Greta's name and asking why she did not follow the rules. Hysterical, Greta throws the phone away and cries in her bedroom. She hears the piano playing out of nowhere. She observes the shadow walking behind the door and assumes it's Brahms. Meanwhile, Brahms continuously talks to Greta, asking her to come out and that he will be kind. When the movement stops, Greta slowly opens the door, only to see a plate with a jelly sandwich in her doorway. She laughs and cries at the same time, as if she has mixed feelings about the discovery. She visits the bedroom and sees Brahms sitting with the rule list beside him. Then Greta approaches Brahms to check if it is blinking. She begins talking if Brahms wants the rules. A little later, the phone rings again from Malcolm's call. Greta begins sharing weird things, like her missing shoes and that Brahms is not just a doll. Meanwhile, Mr. and Mrs. Heelshire compose a letter for Brahms. Mr. Heelshire apologetically emphasizes that now is the time, as if a secret will get unveiled. Afterward, the couple goes to the sea and grabs a stone to drown themselves in the deepest water. The following day, Greta starts adhering to the rules. She wakes up Brahms at 7 o'clock in the morning and plays classical music. She treats Brahms like a child by eating together and reading a story in a clear voice. At this point, Greta follows all the rules for her piece. One day, Malcolm revisits the mansion for the grocery, letter, and salary. He asks Greta if she is okay. In response, Greta shakes her head as if to say no, but loudly says yes. Next, Malcolm invites Greta again for a date, but Greta declines the offer in front of Brahms. When Malcolm leaves, Greta wants to see Brahms moving. She calls and checks if Brahms can reach for his food. She begins crying, asking for a sign if there are spirits. After a few attempts, Greta becomes disappointed and gets the food to throw it. She rechecks Brahms, only to see him in a different spot. Subsequently, Greta invites Malcolm's again, claiming that Brahms is a living doll. She experiments by tracing a line of Brahms' current position. They then leave Brahms alone for a sign. When they open the door, Brahms is in the same spot. Therefore, Greta wants to give it another chance and sincerely talks to Brahms to move. During the second attempt, they hear the child's sound, leading them to open the door. Surprisingly, they both see Brahms in a different position. Moments later, Greta and Malcolm talk in the garden. Greta shares that she suffered a miscarriage before from her ex-boyfriend and understands how it feels to lose a child. At night, Greta prays with Brahms and gives him a goodnight kiss. Then Greta returns to her room, where Malcolm is waiting. The two exchange tongue massages for their workout session. As this happens, Brahms appears to hear everything and secretly stares at the room. Next, Brahms plays loud classical music, stopping Greta and Malcolm from their hormone flows. Consequently, Greta and Malcolm discuss the creepy events. Malcolm then reveals another story. There was once a girl named Emily who always played with Brahms. On Brahms' 8th birthday, Emily attended and got missing, only to see her skull crushed in the woods. Thus, the police need to question the couple, but the house is already in flames, where Brahms got burned alive. Malcolm doubts that Greta might be in danger. However, Greta remains confident that Brahms will not hurt her. Before sleeping, she also gives Brahms a goodnight kiss. Confused, Greta goes to the attic, where she sees an album. There, she sees several pictures of Brahms and Emily, implying the accuracy of the dark story. The following day, Greta still follows the rule by cleaning the traps and carrying Brahms. Seconds later, Greta hears a billiard sound and assumes it's Malcolm. Surprisingly, she sees her abusive ex-boyfriend. She holds Brahms protectively, while the ex-boyfriend casually mocks her for carrying a doll. Next, Greta and the ex-boyfriend eat together with Brahms. The ex-boyfriend suddenly implies that he will take Greta home and the flight is ready. Shortly, Malcolm greets them like a regular delivery man. Malcolm asks Greta about the groceries in the kitchen. There he shares his concerns, but Greta assures him that she can handle the situation. Afterward, Malcolm decides to stay in his car for the entire night. In a moment, Greta provides blankets to the ex-boyfriend. Then, the ex-boyfriend threatens her that she should be ready for the flight and that they will not separate anymore. During the night, Greta tearfully hugs and cries to Brahms. She states that she will not leave Brahms, but will need his help. While everyone is asleep, an unknown individual roams around the house. A little later, drops of blood flow through the ex-boyfriend's face. The ex-boyfriend shouts and calls Greta upon seeing dead rats on their luggage. Greta comes, and they both witness the bloody phrase, "Get out," on the wall. Afterward, the ex-boyfriend blames Greta, but Greta denies it and only picks Brahms. The ex-boyfriend angrily wants to get Brahms, but Greta carries Brahms and starts admitting it was her fault. In response, the ex-boyfriend says it's too late and wants to get the doll instead. Disturbed, Malcolm wakes up and comes to the rescue. He stops the ex-boyfriend and also wants to protect Brahms. Annoyed by the happenings, the ex-boyfriend grabs Brahms and smashes it on the floor. As the porcelain doll breaks into pieces, the entire house begins to shake and the lights start turning off. Everyone gets stunned until the ex-boyfriend attempts to approach the mirror. Shortly, the mirror shatters, pushing the ex-boyfriend away and giving entrance to the greatest horrifying truth. Right then, a grown-up Brahms under a porcelain mask emerges from the wall. Brahms slowly rises to punch the ex-boyfriend. No matter how hard Greta stops him, Brahms continuously chokes the ex-boyfriends and stabs the neck with broken porcelain. Brahms attempts to drag Greta away, but Malcolm knocks him down. For a moment, Greta and Malcolm lock each door, but Brahms only breaks it. They run for their lives until they find a secret compartment. After a few steps, they discover a private room where Greta sees her missing dress, hair, and necklace in a life-size doll. She also notices that the room has a refrigerator and survival things. She trembles after reading a letter from the couple stating, "The girl is yours now." It's then realized that Brahms never died and has been hiding in the secret room for the past 20 years because of killing Emily. Meanwhile, Mr. and Mrs. Heelshire commit suicide as guilt for faking his death from the world, and now offer Greta to take care of Brahms. A thrilling tension resumes when Greta and Malcolm seat their way out. After a few moments, Brahms almost catches them until they find a locked door. Greta keeps pushing the door, while Malcolm prefers to wait and block Brahms. Shortly, Brahms arrives and overpowers Malcolm. He continuously strikes until Malcolm loses consciousness. Next, Greta manages to open the door for escape, but before she can run toward the gate, Brahms shouts that he will kill Malcolm if she runs. As a result, Greta decides to return to save Malcolm. With a sharp object in her pocket, she faces Brahms and invokes the rules, saying it's time for bed. Obsessed, Brahms gradually follows and lies down on his bed. When Greta attempts to leave, Brahms asks for the goodnight kiss as listed in the rule. Just as Greta performs the tongue massage, she grabs her screwdriver and stabs Brahms in the chest. Brahms gets mad and tries to strangle her to death. Fortunately, Greta pushes the weapon deeper, causing Brahms to collapse. The movie ends with Greta saving Malcolm, driving away, and escaping the horrifying mansion. Greta perceives that she now has freedom from the traumatic past. Meanwhile, Brahms is still alive, fixing the broken doll for his new victim in the future. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.